America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall never surrender.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hello and welcome to another episode. This time I'm going to be focusing on Rollo and the Vikings, and I discovered something the other day that is very interesting and is definitely worth sharing with you guys about Rollo and the profound effect he has had on English history. What the History Channel and Vikings has done with the stories of Ragnar Lothbrok and Rollo is, in my opinion, brilliant. They've made it fun, exciting and historically engaging. So, who was the real Rollo? Well, he lived from 1846 to 1913 AD. He took lands of Francia by conquest, and he swore fealty to Charles III of Francia, now France. To seal this bargain of friendship, he married Charles's daughter and began styling himself the first Duke of Normandy, and all of this happens in the show. By all accounts, and according to this historian in particular, A.R. Moncrief, he earned the name the Just because of the just way he ruled and was remembered very fondly. Moncrief also speculates that Rollo may have had a meeting with Alfred the Great, who would have been a good man to listen to on the subject of ruling, as he managed to famously integrate Vikings and Anglo-Saxons into one society, and it became the Kingdom of England. Now, Alfred does appear in the show. He is the son of Athelstan and Judith, so a meeting between the two is a possible storyline for future episodes. And of course we see in the show him being called Caesar, granted those lands in Normandy by the descendant of Charlemagne, Charles III, and proclaimed ruler and much loved of his peoples. And the descendants of Rollo continued to rule over Normandy until his great-great-great-grandson decided he didn't want to be just a duke anymore. He fancied himself a king. And he took his army from Normandy to Hastings, where he defeated this guy, Harold Godwin's son, who famously took an arrow in the eye. And William then proclaimed himself King of England. And William's legacy has remained. In the year 2066, it will mark 1,000 years since the conquest. And in those 1,000 years, the ancestors of William have ruled England and now Britain as its monarch. From the first Plantagenet king, Henry II, to Richard II, the spoilt brat king who had his crown taken away from him, to Richard III, the jealous uncle who stole the crown from his nephews, to Henry VIII, the famous polygamist who had 6 wives, sentenced 2 to death, and could be argued as the first Brexiteer as he organised the break from the Catholic Church. And we have the mad King George III, who warred with America, and Queen Victoria, who was head of the British Empire when it was at its peak and saw herself be crowned Empress of India, all the way to the current day ruling British monarch Elizabeth II. So when you are watching Ragnar Lothbrok and Rollo square off against each other, you are actually watching an ancestor of the current day British monarch live his life, and what an interesting life it was. So now the question that's really worth asking, is Vikings, with all its blood and gore, just an incredibly elaborate prequel to the prim, proper and beautifully designed The Crown? I mean, it's about the same family, right? Just a couple thousand years later. Joking aside, the history of the British monarchy is fascinating. It is as interesting as it is intricate, and it is an absolute goldmine for a soap opera, and I personally can't wait for more historical programs to bring these stories to life in the same successful, engaging and exciting way that Vikings has. That's it for this time. Please subscribe and give us a like. If there's anything about history that interests you or confuses you and you want explaining, please leave a comment and I will be happy to take requests.